Hi viewers, this is Ajay Swami, Assistant Professor of Zoology. Today we are going to discuss the regulation of heart rate. There are factors which show their effect on the heart rate. They are classified into four types for our convenience. They are namely extrinsic factors, intrinsic factors, hormonal factors that regulate the heart rate, and other factors. Let us see one by one. First of all, we will see the extrinsic factors. Extrinsic factors basically they are from the neuronal in origin. In general, the autonomous nervous system that sends some signals, and these signals which are released from the autonomous nervous system, they show drastic effect on the heart rate. In general, the autonomous nervous system comprises of sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Both of them, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, they collectively regulate the heartbeat. So these nerves they emerge from the spinal cord and the medulla of the brain, and these nerves, out of these nerves, always sympathetic nerves they raise the heart rate. Sympathetic nerves they raise the heart rate, whereas the parasympathetic nerves they reduce the heart rate, slow down the heart rate. Sympathetic nerves they raise the heart rate, whereas the parasympathetic nerves they slow down the heart rate. In the medulla of the brain, there are certain regulatory centers which regulate the heart rate. We have two regulatory centers. One is the upper one is here. There are the two regulatory centers, right? The upper one is the cardiac inhibitory center, right? And the second one is the cardiac acceleratory center. So cardiac inhibitory center means it inhibits the heart rate. Whereas the acceleratory center, that is acceleration means exaggeration, speeding up, raises up the heart rate. So there are two regulatory centers of the heart rate in the medulla of the brain. Out of these two, one is the cardiac inhibitory center, second one is the cardiac acceleratory center. Cardiac inhibitory center always inhibits the heart rate, whereas the cardiac accelerator center enhances the heart rate, raises the heart rate. Right? Let us see how they are going to work and how they are going to regulate. So this upper one is the cardiac inhibitory center, right? Now from this cardiac inhibitory center, one pair of vagus nerves emerges from it. This vagus nerve, it has the parasympathetic nerve endings. It consisting of parasympathetic nerve endings which interact with the SA node, that is sinoauricular node, and the AV node, auriculoventricular node, and the bundle of His. So the parasympathetic nerve endings of the vagus nerve, they innervate the SA node, AV node, and the bundle of His. The nerve endings of these parasympathetic fibers, they release a particular neurotransmitter which we known as acetylcholine, ACH. This acetylcholine, it interacts with the SA node and reduce the pacemaker potential. As we know, SA node or sinoauricular node is the first pacemaker and the natural pacemaker. So it acts upon, acetylcholine acts upon the first pacemaker, that is the sinoauricular node. It reduces the pacemaker potential and thereby it slows down the heart rate. It slows down the heart rate. And if you come to the second one, this is the below line. Now this point, it consisting of, in the medulla we have another center, another regulator center, which is known as the cardiac acceleratory center. Cardiac acceleratory center. From this center, there is the emergence of sympathetic nerves. Sympathetic nerves. These sympathetic nerves, they travel through the spinal cord and reaches the SCA node. They also reaches SCA node, sinoauricular node. And the nerve endings of the sympathetic nerves, they produce a special chemical which is known as sympathin. This is known as sympathin. What is the sympathin actually? Sympathin is a mixture of adrenaline and noradrenaline. Both of them collectively called as a sympathin. Now this sympathin chemical, otherwise the sympathin neurotransmitter that releases from the sympathetic nerve endings, and it interacts with the SCA node and it raises the heart rate. That is, there are two centers, acceleratory center and inhibitory center. And acceleratory center that gives rise to the emergence of sympathetic, and inhibitory center that gives rise to the formation of parasympathetic nerves. And due to the collective and complementary actions of sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves of the cardiac inhibitory and the cardiac accelerator centers, they regulate the heartbeat. This is the conclusion. Right? Now, along with this, besides this, we will also have certain factors that regulate the heart rate apart from the extrinsic factors. So, for example, if you observe the stretch receptors, they are located in the aortic arches and as well as the carotid sinus. They also regulate the heart rate. Then how they regulate the heart rate is, for example, if you observe the stretch receptors which are present in the aortic arch and the carotid sinus, they form certain sensory neurons. That is, some sensory neurons arise from the stretch receptors of these two regions, and they reach the sensory neurons, they reach the cardiac inhibitory center. They reach cardiac inhibitory center, and thereby due to the stimulation of inhibitory center, stimulation in the inhibition, and thereby there is a reduced heart rate. They reduce the heart rate. And another thing, there is a vena cava. So these vena cava, large veins, the vena cava, they also have certain sensory neurons. These sensory neurons from the vena cava, they interact with the cardiac accelerating center, cardiac acceleratory center, and thereby they enhance the heart rate. That indicates that the stretch receptors which are present in the aortic arch and the carotid sinus, they regulate the heart rate by interacting with the cardiac inhibitory center. And the sensory receptors of the veins, they interact with the cardiac acceleratory center and they raise the heart rate. And at the same time, these sensory neurons of various parts, they also identify the stretch nature of the blood vessels, and this should be also sent to the brain in the form of signals. At the same time, the various body parts and their respective muscles, Based upon the contraction capacity of these muscles, there will be a more pressure on the blood vessels, and thereby more amount of blood will be sent pumped into the vena cava, pre-vena cava, otherwise post-vena cava. And whenever more amount of blood entered into the blood vessels, they impose more pressure within the heart, and thereby in against to this there will be a drastic contraction of the ventricular walls, otherwise the ventricles, and more amount of blood will be pumped into the aortic arches. That is, whenever there is a drastic muscle contraction, otherwise during the exercise, the stroke volume from the heart will be enhanced. So there is a theory which is known as the Starlings theory, which is known as the Starlings theory. What is the Starling theory or Starling law? Is there is a relation in between cardiac output and the stroke volume, otherwise the volume of blood pumped out from the heart. So this was shown by a British scientist who was named as the Starling. On behalf of his name, this is named as the Starlings Law. Starlings Law, it explains the relation in between cardiac output and the volume of blood that is pumped out. So this is also one kind of regulation. And due to the exercise, there will be a more contraction of muscles takes place within the body that will be paced by the heart through a particular mechanism. Extreme level of muscle contraction of the body due to exercise is faced by the heart through a fantastic mechanism which is known as the automatic fail-safe reflex mechanism. Automatic fail-safe reflex mechanism. So during this mechanism, what happens? The stretch which happens in the aorta and the carotid sinus, that will be informed into, that will give signal to the cardiac inhibitory center, and thereby the cardiac inhibitory center inhibits the heart rate. It performs two functions. The reflex that performs automatic fail-safe reflex that performs two functions. One is it inhibits the fast heartbeat, and second one, there is an adjustment of cardiac cycle in accordance to the volume of blood. So these are the two things which are successfully regulated, successfully made by the automatic fail-safe reflex mechanism in order to meet needs and necessities of the extreme level of muscle contraction of the body due to the exercise, due to the physical work. This is all about the extrinsic factors. And come to the, see here there is a diagrammatic representation of the regulation of the heart rate through the nervous system. Here we have the different kind of sections: cardiac accelerator center and cardiac inhibitory center. So how they are reaching the SCA node and AV node, how they are going to reduce the heart rate, how they are going to accelerate the heart rate, just now we have discussed. And coming to the intrinsic factors. Intrinsic factors means within the heart. They are present within the heart. Generally, the cardiac muscles, otherwise cardiac muscle cells, myonemes, they are as usually self-excitable. That is, in the absence of the neuronal signals also, they themselves, the special kind of muscle fibers which are present in the heart, they themselves start the contraction, heartbeat, so that they are known as the pacemakers. That is, every cell of the cardiac muscle fiber, they have the capacity to contract and relax in a rhythmic way. And this contraction relaxation of the muscle fibers of the heart, they are regulated by the pacemakers. Okay, as we know, there are two kinds of pacemakers in our heart, SCA node and the AV node. SCA node always it determines the time for the contraction of the heart muscle and the rate of the heartbeat. SCA node determines the time elapsed for the muscle contraction, cardiac muscle contraction, and also determines the rate of heartbeat. So thereby, what happens if it is here? If you see, this is the heart, and this is the SCA node, and due to the starting of impulse transmission, it sends its impulses to all the walls of the all auricles, and thereby the auricles get contracted. The same signal received by the AV node, this AV node also it transmits the signal to all the ventricular walls, and subsequently they also undergo the contraction, right? So thereby the contraction and relaxation of the auricles and ventricles takes place. At the same time, the SCA node also innervated by sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. Sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. Now here just now we discussed that the sympathetic nerves they secrete sympathin, that is the combination of epinephrine, norepinephrine, or adrenaline and noradrenaline. Whenever the individual they undergo emotion, that is whenever they undergo emotion, the nerve endings of the sympathetic they produce noradrenaline first. It reaches the SCA node and it raises the action potential of the SCA node, and thereby it raises the heart rate. So whenever there is a release of norepinephrine, noradrenaline, due to the more contraction of the heart muscle, and there will be enhanced in the stroke volume. How it will be enhanced? It raises up the calcium ion level within the cardiac muscle, and thereby that allows the formation of the cross bridges in between the actin myosin muscle proteins, and that leads to the contraction of the cardiac muscle. So later on the adrenal also released, okay, and thereby that also enhances the heart rate. Okay, and see the hormonal regulation. So what happens with the hormonal regulation? There are certain hormones and there are some neurohumoral factors. They show effect upon the regulation of the heart rate. Out of these hormones and neurohumoral factors, adrenaline and the noradrenaline, both of them they show exaggerating effect upon the heart rate. So where actually they are produced? For example, this is the kidney. Upon the kidney we have adrenal gland. In the adrenal gland we have the cortex and the medulla, outer cortex and inner medulla. This medulla can capable to produce two kinds of hormones. These hormones are known as epinephrine or norepinephrine, otherwise adrenaline and noradrenaline, whatever it may be the same name, right? So these are the chemicals which are produced from hormones which are produced from the adrenal medulla. Out of these two, epinephrine or adrenaline that shows more effect than the noradrenaline or norepinephrine. Both of them they raise the heart rate. Right? And one more hormone that shows effects on the heart rate is the thyroxin. If you observe the thyroxin location, it is present on the either side of the trachea connected through the isthmus duct. So in the thyroid gland, we have the thyroglobular cells. These thyroglobular cells they produce thyroxin, that is the triiodothyronine and the tetraiodothyronine. This thyroxin also shows its effect on the heart rate. How? It enhances the basal metabolic rate, BMR. So whenever there is an enhancement in the basal metabolic rate, then thereby there will be a requirement of more energy. So how the energy will be produced? It receives more oxygen, okay, and it receives more food material due to the enhancement of the heart rate, right? Then there will be a more cardiac output, and those tissues which are actively participating in the enhancement of the BMR, the entire blood, more amount of the blood that is supplied to the active tissues, and thereby there will be a enhanced heart rate when compared to the normal stage, so that is the hormonal regulation includes the adrenal medullary hormones, which we call them as catecholamines, adrenaline, noradrenaline, or epinephrine, norepinephrin, and the hormones which are produced from the thyroid gland like the thyroxin. Both of them, they have the exaggerating effect, or they raise the heart rate. And finally, if you observe the last factor, that is the other factors that control the heart rate. Out of these other factors, so here it is the epinephrine, that is thyroxin. So this is adrenal gland above the kidney. Other factors include the pH, carbon dioxide concentration, and the temperature. pH, carbon dioxide concentration, and the temperature. High pH, low CO2 concentration, and low temperature, they reduce the heart rate. High pH, that reduce the heart rate, low CO2 concentration reduce the heart rate, and low temperature, that reduce the heart rate. Whereas low pH, high CO2 concentration, and high temperature, that raises up the enhance the heart rate. These are the other factors that regulate the body temperature. They regulate the body heart rate. Okay. Finally, at the end, what we have to remember is the sympathin, which is produced from the nerve endings of the sympathetic nervous system, that enhances the heart rate. Second point, the acetylcholine, which is released from the parasympathetic nerve endings, that reduce the heart rate, slow down the heart rate. Then the epinephrine, norepinephrine hormones, which are produced from the adrenal medulla, they also enhance the heart rate. Thyroxin hormone also raises the heart rate, right? High pH reduce the heart rate, low pH raise the heart rate. Low CO2 reduce the heart rate, high CO2 raise the heart rate. Low temperature reduce the heart rate, and high temperature enhance the heart rate. These are the things we should remember apart from the regulation of the heartbeat. And there are, for the extra information purpose, there are certain which are usually asked in the competitive exams. Let us see some sort of cardiac and artery diseases, just their names and the effect. Let us start with the arteriosclerosis. What is the arteriosclerosis? Is there is an accumulation of fats, cholesterol in the inside of the arteries, that become yellow flakes due to the accumulation of cholesterol along with the fibrous tissue and calcium salts, and thereby the blood vessels, they become rigid. So these yellow colored patches, they are known as the erythematous plaques, and thereby there is no space for the transport of the blood. And coming to the second one, atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is nothing but the common heart attack. So in the terminology of the medicine, it is known as the myocardial infarction. Myocardial infarction. Myo means muscle. Cardial, cardiac muscle. Right? Infarction means there is the difficulty in the respiration due to the scarcity of the oxygen. So what happens? It happens in the coronary artery. So this is the image of coronary artery. We know that coronary artery are the small arteries which supply the pure blood to the walls of the cardiac muscles. Other is the walls of the heart. That is, the cardiac muscles get supplied the pure blood through the coronary arteries. So there are the formation of yellow color plaques, yellow fatty plaques within the coronary arteries. So that may be due to the accumulation of cholesterol, other fats and cell debris, and thereby they lose the coronary arteries, they lose the elasticity, and the cavity will be very narrowed, and there will be a inhibitory effect. Otherwise there will be a block for the blood circulation, and thereby as a result of this there will be a stoppage of blood supply to important organs like the heart and as well as the brain. And in some of the cases the coronary arteries they become very thin, that is known as ischemia. In some of the times there is the formation of blood clots. These clots are known as a thrombus, and some of the times they may release from the blood vessels and they freely float in the water, and they transport to other parts of the circulatory system. Then these floating thrombus are known as the embolus. If they are blocked the coronary arteries, that leads to the heart attack. So the risk factors are hypertension and the diabetes, high levels of cholesterol in the blood, and the obesity, finally the smoking. These are the risk factors of the atherosclerosis. So some of the times, apart from the diet, if there is a deficiency of the fiber, low fiber diet, otherwise if you consume high saturated fatty acids, that may lead to the atherosclerosis. If you change your diet, like taking more antioxidant food and doing the regular exercise and avoid smoking, thereby you may escape from the atherosclerosis. The treatment for the atherosclerosis may be in two ways. One is by the bypass surgery, another one is by the angiogram, other angioplasty. Coming to the third kind of disease, thrombophlebitis. Thrombophlebitis is somewhat related to the peripheral veins. So the formation of blood clots at the legs and the pelvic region, and thereby there is a localized swelling of the blood vessels, burning and the reddening of the skin, and some of the times the blood clots from the veins they may also release into the alveoli, otherwise the lungs. So they may also restrict the blood flow to the lungs. That is known as a pulmonary infarction. So that after the operation, after the surgery, the doctors advise and encourage the patients to walk, and they will observe the walking phenomena. So that is, they come to know whether there is a thrombophlebitis or phlebitis. And coming to the fourth one, that is a hypertension. In this, the rigidity of the blood vessels is more, and the blood vessels lose elasticity, and there will be enhancement in the blood pressure. In order to supply more and more amount of the blood, the heart raises very rapidly, and thereby that results in the formation of hypertension. Due to the hypertension, there is a damage to the kidneys, and some of the times there is a blockage of blood flow to the brain that leads to the cerebral hemorrhage. So some of the times there will be a non-functioning of the heart also. These are the severe effects of the hypertension. So general BP, general blood pressure is the 120/80. If it is raised furthermore in this direction, that leads to the hypertension. So one more important thing, it is the 17th May is the World Hypertension Day. So some of the times they may ask these days in the competitive examinations. Then final one is the last one is the stroke or cerebrovascular accident. What is the cerebrovascular accident is due to the restriction to the blood supply, restriction of blood supply to the brain, that leads to the damage of the brain, then that forms the stroke. It is usually seen in the old age people due to the damage of the blood vessels. The risk may be more in the males rather than the females. Risk may be more in the adults rather than the children. And those women that use the oral contraceptives like tablets, and they may susceptible for the stroke. And the risk factors are hypertension, diabetes, and accumulation of cholesterol in the blood, certain heart diseases, and the smoking. They may be the risk factors for the stroke, otherwise cerebrovascular accident. These are the certain heart, cardiac and arterial diseases which are related to the circulatory system. Thank you one and all.